So, guys, you remember that a couple of days ago, there's an article that came out saying that at an event that was organized by the American bank Goldman Sachs in Johannesburg, President Cyril Ramaphosa said he wanted to do a deal with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And on the same event, President Ramaphosa said that we don't want to explain ourselves, we just want to do a deal with the United States of America. And guys, I remember I came to the platform and I said, I don't know how the president is actually going to pull it off, considering that there is so much animosity between him and Israel. And if you look at Israel, it is one of the biggest allies of the United States of America. So America is actually pissed off with the fact that the Ramaphosa administration took Israel to the International Court of Justice, basically accusing them of genocide. But still, the president of the country said that I want to do a deal with the president of the United States of America, Donald Trump. So fine. So recently, there's a very interesting article that I saw on BizTech, and this article talks about a scathing article that President Ramaphosa wrote at the Foreign Policy magazine. So we are talking about one of the biggest political magazines in the United States. So when something is said on the Foreign Policy magazine, you are sure that the lawmakers in the United States of America are going to read what the president of this country is saying. So let's look at this article on BizTech. You know, guys, when I look at some of these things, these are the type of stories that you would actually expect the mainstream media to go out and pump out in the public to say that, guys, the president of this country just wrote a scathing article about USA and about Israel in one of the biggest policy magazines in the world. So this article, it says that President Cyril Ramaphosa's attack on the United States of America can have a severe consequences for South Africa, including sanctions against Americans holding South African government debt. On Tuesday, the 25th of February 2025, President Cyril Ramaphosa and others published an article in Foreign Policy magazine. So this is the magazine that we are actually talking about. His co-authors were Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, and the Hague Group Chair Vasha Neluta. So these are the people that actually wrote that scathing article against America and Israel. The Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar, the Colombian President Gustavo, and the Hague Group Chair Vasha. The Hague Group is a coalition between South Africa, Bolivia, Colombia, Honduras, and Namibia. The Hague Group is a coalition between South Africa, Bolivia, Colombia, Honduras, and Namibia. The article focuses heavily on the Israel war in Gaza, calling it an assault against the Palestinian people, echoing dark chapters in their own country's histories. Ramaphosa promised severe actions against Israel and its leaders. Ramaphosa promised severe actions against Israel and its leaders, including arresting Israeli leaders and preventing vessels carrying military supplies to Israel from using South Africa's ports. The authors also took aim at the President of the United States, Donald Trump, saying his proposal to take over Gaza strikes at the very foundations of the international law. They argued that it meant annexation followed by ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, who Trump now suggests should be deported to Israel and Jordan. Such actions, if pursued, would constitute a grave violation of international law and the fundamental principles enshrined in the UN Charter, they said. This article will further increase tension between South Africa and the United States of America and deteriorate the relations further. So, I don't understand, guys. Maybe you can help me with something. If the president of this country was so diplomatic in these past couple of weeks, saying that I want to have a healthy relationship with the president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, I want to have a deal with the president of the United States of America, Donald Trump. Why would the president of this country basically go to the Foreign Policy magazine and basically write a scathing article that is attacking the United States of America and Israel? I mean, like, I don't understand. Maybe you guys can help me understand, but personally, I don't understand. Because if you want to have a relationship, a healthy relationship with someone, I mean, you should show, your actions should actually show that you want to have a healthy relationship with that person. It says that in February, Trump froze all United States aid to South Africa over rights violations stemming from the new land expropriation law. The impact will primarily affect more than $400 million annual funding, $400 million annual funding for the country's long-standing AIDS prevention and treatment program. After Ramaphosa's article on the 25th of February 2025, Donald Trump ordered an immediate end to U.S. aid funding for HIV organizations in South Africa. So this is basically what happened, because you remember that the Trump administration, they issued out an executive order saying that we are stopping all the U.S. aid throughout the world for 3 months. And one of the reasons why the Trump administration did that is because they wanted to look at the foreign policy of these countries that they are funding, to look and to check if the foreign policy of these countries that we are funding is in line with the foreign policy of the United States of America. So I guess it's clear as day that our foreign policy here in South Africa is not in line with the foreign policy of the United States of America. And this scathing article that President Ramaphosa wrote on Foreign Policy magazine did not make things even better. It makes things even worse, because in this article it says that after Ramaphosa's article on the 25th of February 2025, Donald Trump ordered an immediate end to U.S. aid funding for HIV organizations in South Africa. It is not only Trump who is taking a hard line. 4 U.S. Congress members, Andrew Ogles, Tom Tiffany, Joe Wilson, and Don Bacon, wrote to Trump about South Africa. They urged him to revoke South Africa's trade benefits under AGOA and consider suspending diplomatic ties. So guys, this is not good. This is not good at all, because now you have the U.S. Congress members that are whispering in the ears of Donald Trump to say that maybe that AGOA of theirs, you need to take away that AGOAs of theirs and consider suspending diplomatic ties. The members argued that South Africa repeatedly undermined U.S. interest and violated AGOA's eligibility requirements. So it says that Joel Pollack, the front-runner to become the United States' next ambassador to South Africa, told Biz News that sanctions against South Africa are definitely on the table. So we might get sanctioned because of the ANC and their president and their aggressive position against the United States of America. So Joel Pollack said Ramaphosa's article significantly raises the stakes and gives the Trump administration's reasons to kick South Africa out of AGOA. There can also be sanctions against South Africa and specific politicians and groups for their own conduct and anti-United States stance. Renowned political and economic analyst Frans Cronje also suggested that sanctions could be imposed against South Africa. He said sanctions could hurt numerous big South Africa industries, including automotive manufacturing sector. So speaking about Frans Cronje also had a conversation with Alec Hogg on Biz News about the same thing that we are talking about. So guys, right now the United States of America is basically threatening big things against us. They are threatening sanctions. They are threatening to get us out of AGOA. They are threatening to cut the diplomatic ties. And this is not the position that we want. But again, you have the president of this country that actually wrote a scathing article towards the Trump administration and Benjamin Netanyahu, basically attacking them. So even the people there in the United States of America, they are not happy at all with this scathing article that President Ramaphosa wrote with his counterparts.
So Ramaphosa has written a piece for a publication called Foreign Policy. It's based in Washington, and well, to say it's going to get up the noses of the Americans is an understatement. Frans Cronje, Dr. Frans Cronje, the chairman of the board of the Social Research Foundation, joins us now. Thanks for joining us so nice and early, Frans. Just to put it in context, Foreign Policy magazine, how relevant is it?
Well, very relevant. It's a prominent international publication. And the message you place in it, regardless of who you are, is one that will be picked up within, a matter of hours by serious foreign policy people around the world.
And the message that was sent by Cyril Ramaphosa and his co-authors, the Prime Minister of Malaysia and the President of Colombia and some activists from India, was sending, I suppose, sticking a bit of a stick in the eye of the Trump administration and particularly Israel. How did you interpret what they wrote?
I thought it was a very aggressive attack that essentially said to hell with the United States and with the Trump administration and with Israel and with the Israeli leadership. I don't think they could have put it any firmer than that in the way in which they conveyed the message.
And the reason for doing this, given that South Africa is in a precarious situation, looking at our economy, looking at the latest SRF polls, which showed the ANC, Ramaphosa's party, down to 32%, what might have motivated it?
Well, I don't see the economic sense in it. The ANC last week from the SRF got a very bad poll number, the lowest it's been. It's down into the 30s now. The few days ahead of that, there's great difficulty in even presenting the budget because the tax increase, the VAT increase is so complicated and so politically unpopular and would cause such great further damage, even to the ANC's own voter base, had that gone through. You're also in a position where the growth outlook for the South African economy is sitting at sub 2%, perhaps closer to 1% of GDP. We know that at that level, it's not possible to close the unemployment gap that the ANC itself needs for its longer-term political survival. And the most important number is fixed investment to GDP. That sits at about 15%, and at that level it's consistent with a 1.5% economic growth rate. But to take the economic growth rate to, let's say, nearer 4%, you need to lift fixed investment to GDP to around 25%. And a foreign policy positioning along the lines of what we saw yesterday in Foreign Policy magazine. I don't see how that leads to the economic solutions, the investment increases that are necessary to improve living standards in South Africa. And ultimately, too, and this is the great irony of the thing, under the leadership of Mr. Ramaphosa, save the ANC from what might be, the way things are going now, it's complete annihilation.
So why double down on an anti-American policy when the Americans are already saying that they're very unhappy with the way that South Africa's going, and they've already cut off aid? Now they can perhaps make even more punitive sanctions against this country.
Yeah, I wouldn't say cutting off aid is a punitive sanction, not that you've said that. I mean, this, one must remember, is the money of American taxpayers. And if they wish to have it back, that is so. And South Africans should ask themselves a question about what kind of society have they themselves created, where critical upliftment programs and the like, and kill my phone, critical upliftment programs and the like need to be funded by foreigners. However, sanctions took a great leap forward yesterday after this foreign affairs piece. And not sure what that's going to be, but if this continues, the sanctions may look like this. There may be actions against specific South African individuals or institutions that are seen to threaten the interests of the United States or act in a corrupt fashion or threaten human rights around the world. Those may be preceded by some actions on AGOA, but remember, AGOA is a very small proportion of South African exports. If you export under AGOA, of course, that's of little comfort to you. And the country's auto industry may be brought down by this. But that's a step. Then you get to more targeted sanctions. And beyond that, the one that I think South African institutions, banks and the like, need to watch most carefully, the greatest risk for them is sanctions on the holding of South African government debt. If that step is later taken, then the consequences inside the South African economy and for really anyone that does business here, but financial institutions in particular, will be very, very serious.
I mean, guys, me personally, I don't understand, because it seems like the president is on the double game, because here at home, he tells the people how he wants to mend relations with the United States. You remember that even during that event that was organized by Goldman Sachs, he did say that he's waiting for the dust to settle, because the end goal is to go to Washington and mend relations between him and Donald Trump. But if he's saying all of these things at home, but internationally he's writing scathing articles attacking the same people that he said he want to mend things with, what does it mean? What does it mean? Because right now it seems like the people of this country are just being fooled to say that, guys, please hold yourself. Please hold yourself. We are not fighting these people. But internationally, you can see that the president of this country is basically on a war against Israel and against the United States of America. So right now, it seems like the president is playing the double game, because at home, he's saying one thing, internationally, he's saying another thing. And this thing could actually get us into a lot of trouble. That's why I'm saying that I'm hugely disappointed at the mainstream media and the fact that these are not the kind of stories that the mainstream media is basically pushing out. I'm hugely disappointed in them.
Once we know that everybody gets emotional about certain things, and particularly in this case, we know the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa are very unhappy about, in their perception, the way that the Palestinians, or particularly in Gaza, are being treated. But surely there's a risk-reward situation here. There are many things that we as private citizens feel upset about, but we don't go and scream and shout in the streets about them, because there is a consequence to it. Surely there's some kind of a brains trust within the union buildings who would say, but hang on, the consequences of these current actions are going to really hurt the country.
Well, look, the brains trust in the union buildings has taken the ANC to 40% in the last election, which was a completely unnecessary result for them. I discussed at dinner this evening yesterday evening with some people who were historically very close to the ANC about just why that was even allowed to happen. It was completely unnecessary. Had some investment and some growth flowed into the South African economy sufficient to create 100, 200,000 net new jobs per year. In practice, under the leadership of Mr. Ramaphosa, the number of net new jobs per year is less than 100,000. At the times it's been 50,000. When Mandela and Mbeki ran South Africa, we were creating 500,000 net new jobs per year. And the discussion that I've never had a proper answer to, and I couldn't get one out of dinner last night, was why who allows the ANC to be so absolutely wrecked by counterproductive decisions, and whatever's behind this stuff, I'll go into that for you in a moment. But whatever's behind this stuff is suicidal for South Africa's economy, suicidal for the ANC as a direct consequence of that. And what I think is useful if people haven't done it is go look a bit at India's foreign policy. Recently, the Indians and the Americans were able to get together and talk to each other. One or two mildly critical things were said, but nothing terrible in the main. India maintains relations with countries all around the world, Russia, China, the likes, and does so terribly well, and to its great advantage, and maintains the same with Europe and the United States. So it's perfectly possible to maintain a balanced foreign policy, and I think it would be wise for any South African government not to lean heavily to one ideological pole or another, but to run a South Africa first foreign policy that sought to attract advantages, even if it comes to playing off the great powers and their interests in Africa against each other. But your question on the Brands Trust, the answer is it's the same Brands Trust that crashed the ANC into the ground in a sort of vast detonation and completely unnecessarily, and now has taken it to 200 days into GNU to just over 30% of the vote. And I don't know. I don't understand it, Alec. Makes no sense.
You mentioned the GNU.
It makes no sense at all, guys. It makes no sense at all. So, guys, please help me understand, man, on the comment sections. What is it exactly that the president of this country is doing? What is it exactly that he's trying to achieve? Because at this point, I don't want to lie. I don't understand. Please, guys, help me understand on the comment sections. Please tell me what you think on the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button. The most important part, subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.